This morning. Everyone, my name is Jason Bliss, and I am the Executive Director for Walker. This morning, I am joined by Ty Reed. Ty Reed, since entering in recovery in 2016, Ty Reed has rebuilt his life and now uses the lessons learned while recovering from homelessness, addiction, and life as a petty criminal to help others. Through his nonprofit, Recovery Center Services, which is dedicated to helping people in recovery find and keep employment, he provides career coaching and development to assist individuals in rebuilding their professional lives. Ty also uses public speaking, storytelling, workshops, and webinars to communicate his message to those in recovery, their family, and their family. We're going to just a few housekeeping things as Ty does his presentation this morning. I'm going to be clicking through the PowerPoint slides as you guys have questions and such that come up throughout. Don't hesitate to put them into the chat window, and as time permits throughout the presentation today, we will do our very best to get all of those questions answered. I want to thank you again, all of you, for taking your time to join us here today. And with that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ty.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. Jason's going to go ahead and share his screen, and we'll get through this presentation here. So welcome, everybody, this morning. Thanks for being here and allowing me to share about a topic that I think is really, really important and something I spend a ton of time talking about, which is employment for folks that have past criminal justice involvement. And I'm Ty. I'm from Recovery Career Services. Next slide, please. And thank you. And so we're going to talk a bit today about resources and ways for you to find work if you happen to have a criminal history. And we're going to talk about it in three different areas. If you, I guess a couple of different areas. Either A, if you want to do it on your own and not rely on any help from other organizations, or B, if you want to actually take advantage of some programs or some other nonprofits that are in Washington State that may be able to help you find work if you're having difficulty. Next slide, please, Jason. All right, and so we'll just do a brief introduction, and I'll tell you a little bit about who the heck I am and what exactly is Recovery Career Services, my little nonprofit. Next slide. Thank you. And so I'm Ty. You know, what all those letters after my name mean is, frankly, I've just been really, really lucky. I've been lucky enough to go to the University of Washington a couple of times and graduate. I've been lucky enough to get a professional in human resources designation, which means that I have a good idea of how hiring managers and human resource professionals think when it comes to hiring folks that have past criminal justice involvement. I'm a certified workforce development professional, and so I spend a lot of time talking to job seekers about their challenges and how they can overcome those challenges in finding employment. And I'm also a certified peer counselor in Washington State, and am honored to be able to use my experience as a person in recovery to help other people with their journey of recovery as well, no matter what that looks like. My day job is I work as a business engagement project manager for Workforce Snohomish, which is a nonprofit in Snohomish County. And my day job has me spending a lot of time talking to employers and businesses. And so I hear a lot about how they think about hiring folks who have past criminal justice involvement impacts their organization, you know, how they think and why they think that way. And then my passion is my nonprofit, which is Recovery Career Services, a website at recoveryandwork.org. And I spend my time providing career coaching and employment assistance to two groups of people. Number one, people who are kind of like me. And when I say kind of like me, people who have previously been homeless, been in the criminal justice system, or maybe have been addicted in the past and are now trying to find their ways back into the job market after being out of work for a while, because it can be kind of a challenge. The other group of people that I spend some time helping that doesn't get talked about as much are people who still have their jobs, but those jobs have been impacted by substance use in some way. So maybe a person is working for a company, their drug and alcohol use is having them showing up late to work. Maybe the boss has said, if you don't start showing up on time, you're going to lose your job. And they're trying to figure out how to save their job by both managing their substance issues and trying to manage those relationships and communication at work. So I am honored to be able to work with that group as well. Next slide, please. And so I just want you to know that I can totally relate to anybody who's watching this who has criminal convictions and has had difficulty finding work. I got a few mug shots, as you can see. Thank you, Snohomish County, for all the green stripes. And I've also been to rehab a couple times. That picture at the bottom in the middle was me. My last time I went to rehab in 2015, I had literally been off the streets from being homeless for about 2 days at that point. And started the journey back in earnest in 2016, and was really surprised at how difficult it was to find work. Next slide, please. And that's where my nonprofit was really born. I've actually been an incredibly lucky guy in my life. I've been lucky enough to get good education. I've been lucky enough to have 10 or 12 years of really high level corporate sales and business development experience, where I was a nationally recognized salesperson and was making a pretty nice living. But after being homeless and being a petty criminal, and after being mired in addiction, that didn't matter to anybody when I got sober in 2016. The first job I was able to find, despite all the great background I had, was part-time as a janitor. And don't get me wrong, that is honorable work and it's necessary work, and that job did a lot for me. But I was really surprised that it was so difficult for somebody who had been as lucky as me to really find quality work. And started to think, well, if it's that tough for me, what's it like for folks who haven't had the same luck or advantages as I have? So I thought that I could help folks with my experience. And yes, you're going to have access to all these slides. I'll make sure that Jason gets these out to folks who want to have them after the presentation, so you can look up all the resources and information we have here. Next slide, please. All right, and so just a quick overview of some stuff we're going to talk about. The first thing is making sure before you go for an interview that you actually know exactly what is on your criminal record. I'm often surprised at the number of folks that I have coaching sessions with that don't know exactly what's on their record. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can do that. Talk a bit about some community-based organizations, meaning nonprofits, and government programs that you could use that could make it easier for you to find work. And then talk about looking in some of the right places for opportunities for work and using what I call the ABC employment path model. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that is coming up. Next slide, please. All right, so just some statistics that not everybody knows, but are kind of important to think about. The first thing is that the United States by far, and many of you probably know this, has the highest incarceration rate in the world. We put people in jail, we put people in prison at many, way higher rates than other countries do. And according to the FBI and the Department of Justice, somewhere between 70 and 77 million adults in the US have a criminal record. And that's about 1 in 3 adults. And in Washington State, there's over 2 million people that have a criminal record. And as far as the nationwide, the number of people who have criminal records in the United States is higher than the number of people who have bachelor's degrees. So that gives you an idea of how many people actually have criminal records and how common it is, quite frankly. And in Washington State, of those 2 million people that have criminal records, I think it's like 2.2 million. About 90% of those people actually have no current involvement with the criminal justice system. And what I mean by that is they're not on probation, they're not on parole, they're not doing community service, and they're not making restitution to the court. So what that says is that there's a bunch of people that at some point in their lives picked up a criminal conviction, and now they're just dragging it around with them everywhere they go. And it's costing them opportunities for housing in some cases, opportunities for education in some cases, and definitely opportunities in employment. And there are some studies that have been done over time, and they kind of all show the same thing, is that if an employer knows upfront that you have a criminal record, your chances are cut in half of them actually calling you for an interview. And anybody here who has tried to find a job with a criminal record and has difficulty can kind of attest to that, right? So luckily some things have been done recently which help that, but it's a little bit tougher. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit tougher. Next slide, please. Okay. And so now here's some good news. So second chance hiring and fair chance hiring are starting to get a lot more attention as organizations recognize that there's got to be a better way than denying opportunity to folks. And there's a difference between second chance hiring and fair chance hiring. And I'll kind of talk about what that is here in just a little bit. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of big companies, a lot of manufacturing associations and construction associations that are recognizing that providing hiring and employment opportunities for individuals who have past criminal justice involvement is vital. And quite frankly, if you're having trouble finding a job right now is probably the best time for you to be looking, because more and more employers are talking about it. And because so many workers have left the job market, there's opportunities out there that weren't necessarily available before. Many states have also implemented something called the Ban the Box law. And in Washington State, this was part of the Fair Chance in Hiring Act, which was passed back in 2018, and which did several things. But the biggest thing that it did was it made it illegal for an employer to ask up front, basically before they interview you, whether or not you have a criminal conviction. So there used to be this box on job applications that said, if you have a criminal conviction, click this box or check this box. And so that box has been removed. And so what it's done is it has provided opportunities for more people to get interviews. And regardless of what a lot of hiring managers will tell you or what you might think, for a lot of people, it kind of comes down to gut feel. If you get a chance to get an interview with somebody and they like you and you give their gut a good feeling, you're probably going to get an opportunity. And so these ban the box laws have given more people opportunities to get in front of hiring managers, HR people, and actually, basically make their case about why they should be considered for employment. And the other piece of good news is that more and more people actually know somebody who's in recovery or has a criminal record or both. Now, this cuts both ways. Maybe their cousin was in recovery and their cousin ripped them off because they relapsed or something. So there certainly is that. But really what is happening now is it's the hearts and minds of people that are kind of starting to be won over. It was so difficult in the past for folks who couldn't imagine themselves being connected to the criminal justice system in any way, or knowing somebody who was in recovery from addiction or alcoholism in any way. Now, since there's so many of us out there, quite frankly, most people know somebody who's in that situation. And if they're in that situation, there's a good likelihood that they're having issues with employment. And so people are just a lot more empathetic than they were before, which works to the advantage of folks like me who have past criminal justice involvement. Next slide, please. All right, so to look up your criminal record, if you have criminal convictions in only one county or criminal record in only one county, then you can just go to the county courthouse, either look them up online, depending on where you live, or you can actually just go to the courthouse and get a copy of your criminal record. If you have convictions in more than one county, then in Washington State, really the easiest way to do it, you could obviously go to every county if you want to do that. But the Washington State Patrol can provide you with a criminal history. It costs somewhere between $13 and $20. You can just order it online and download it as a PDF. But that's the best way in this state, if all your convictions are in this state, to find that. If you have convictions in other states, then you actually want to go to the
Good morning.
Good morning. You actually want to go to the FBI database to look that up, and that'll provide you with all the information that you need. Next slide. All right, and I just want to say something very quickly about why it's important to know your criminal record. So knowing your criminal record gives you an opportunity to do something which is pretty important when it comes to interviewing. Go to an interview, and we're going to talk about whether or not you should disclose your criminal convictions or not. Interview, and you're in a situation where you need to disclose your criminal history. You want to be as thorough as you can. You want to address everything, because it gives you an opportunity to get credit for being honest. And you never want to be in a position where an employer runs a criminal background check and you didn't address something and it looks like you're trying to hide it. Now, you might not have been trying to hide it. You very likely really didn't know about it, but you want to take every opportunity for getting credit for being honest and don't look like you're trying to be deceptive in any way. Even if that's not what you were trying to do, sometimes employers can think that. All right. And so I'm going to apologize to the folks that are in the audience today who are in other parts of the state. Because I am in Seattle, my knowledge is based on the western side of the state. And so there's a number of organizations that I know, community-based organizations, again, nonprofits, who work with folks who have previous criminal justice involvement and helping them find employment. And you can Google reentry services or worker retraining in your particular area if you're not on the west side of the state. But these community-based organizations are really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, all the services they provide are absolutely at no cost to you. So that's, free is a price I would pay anytime. So I absolutely recommend for that reason. The other reason is that, as we all know, what happens to folks off the job can really impact how they perform on the job. So for example, if you are having trouble with foods, you're food insecure, if you're having issues with transportation, if you're having mental health struggles, if you're having housing struggles off the job, those can really impact your ability to get to work and how you perform when you're actually on the job. And so these community-based organizations offer what we call wraparound services. And those wraparound services are basically meant to help you navigate life outside of the job. And those wraparound services are also intended to help you keep your job. It's what we call retention. And so you get an ongoing support staff in a lot of ways to kind of help you manage the things that would impact your ability to be a good employee. And you're going to get support in those areas to kind of help you, to help shore up any needs that you might have. And employers love this too, because employers they hire you for the skills that you have, but they obviously have a vested interest in you staying on the job. And so do these organizations as well. As a matter of fact, for some of these organizations, you're not compensating them, but a chunk of the compensation that they get from federal or state dollars is wrapped up in whether they can help you stay on the job. And so they're invested in not only getting you work, but in helping you keep work for a period, usually 6 to 12 months afterwards. So you're going to get a lot of ongoing support. So that's why connecting with these organizations is important. So they're going to give you those wraparound services. They're also going to provide you with job training and job skills that get you job ready. Thank you very much, Dwayne. I appreciate it. That also get you job ready so that you can go out and get that job and keep that job. And Pioneer Human Services has locations both here in Western Washington. They also have a location in Spokane. Orion Industries provides also job and worker retraining. Should you put job training on your resume? Kristen, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. That's a great question. Actually, you know what? I'll talk about it right now. So you absolutely should put job training on your resume, especially if you don't have any recent job history to point to, or a place that you can go, a person you can go to from like a supervisor somewhere else that will give you a recommendation. Because these job training programs are actually, it's not just training, it's pretty much like a job. So you have expectations for attendance, you have expectations for job quality, you have expectations for your ability to work with coworkers as a teammate. You have expectations about timeliness, meaning how quickly or how efficiently you can complete tasks. So although these are training programs that are designed to get you ready for work, it's like a job, and they grade you like it's like a job. And so if you can list that on your resume and, oh, by the way, back that up with a letter of recommendation from one of your instructors or from your case manager who's helping you through the program, that's going to go a long way to putting an employer's mind at ease. Employers are always trying to lower their risks when it comes to hiring employees. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a risk in hiring any employee, whether you hire somebody that has past criminal justice involvement or you hire somebody that answered an ad off Indeed. But employers are always looking to lower that risk as much as they can, which is why they ask for resumes and they ask for references and they run background checks. And so anything that you can provide to an employer, like I've been to this job training course for the last 6 months, and so I'm definitely work ready. And oh, by the way, here's my certificate of graduation. Here's one of my instructors that will give me a glowing recommendation. And here's my case manager that will let you know that I've been doing the work necessary to be job ready, is going to go a long way towards easing the employer's mind in a lot of ways. I hope that answers your question. All right. If
yes,
it doesn't,
does.
awesome. Thank you. Okay. And so, and as I mentioned before, now I've listed evergreen goodwill industries, and evergreen goodwill is here in Puget Sound. But if you've got a goodwill in your area, there's a good chance that they provide some sort of job training or worker retraining for you and some sort of education options. So I would, again, urge you to kind of check them out. Now, these are all big, very large nonprofit organizations. There's also some smaller organizations. And again, if you're not in the Puget Sound area, you can Google reentry services or worker retraining. There are also some smaller organizations. Oh, sorry, Jason, go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So there's some smaller organizations as well. Defy Ventures actually has a program where they work with people directly out of the Monroe Correctional Facility. And Defy is a little bit different, where the other organizations focus on finding people employment. Defy works with folks that need to find employment, but they also have a training program set up for folks with previous criminal justice involvement that want to own their own business. And so there's an entrepreneurship piece of this. I've done some coaching for them and some volunteering. They're a great organization. And so I'd encourage folks that are thinking about owning their own business to maybe seek them out and get some coaching about that. And then the Workforce Foundation and Uplift Northwest are both organizations, again, in Puget Sound, that work all over Puget Sound, that provide employment support for folks who have previous criminal justice involvement or were previously homeless. Next slide, please. All right. And so we've talked a little bit about community-based organizations and nonprofits. Now let's talk about one of the other ways that if you have past criminal justice involvement, you can get some help finding work. And that is by using government programs. And so this kind of talks a bit about the day job that I have. So there is basically this pool of funds under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and we call that WIOA. That's the acronym we use for it. And this is a pool of federal funds that were actually sent out to the states to maximize employment in a specific area. And in Washington State, that area could either be, if it's big enough, it could be a county. So Snohomish County is an area, King County is an area, Pierce County is an area, or it can be an actual geographic area. So for example, over in the Tri-Cities, it's not just that county. They've got a couple of other counties around them that make up that particular area where these federal funds have flowed into in order to help increase the employment that are there. And the way that you access those funds is through WorkSource. And so I talked about nonprofits. WorkSource is a division of the Employment Security Department. So it is a state agency, and their only job is to help job seekers find work. That's all they're tasked to do. So if you need help with a resume, if you need help with mock interviewing skills, if you need worker retraining, if you're thinking about going back to school because you want to be a programmer and you need funds to be able to do that so that you can get a job, then they have programs for that as well. And so you would access that through WorkSource, and in every single area, there's a WorkSource office, for sure, for sure. Could you go to the next slide, please? All right, and so what does WIOA provide? I talked a little bit about this already, but work opportunities, funds for worker retraining, and funds for education. And under those work opportunities, that is actually, there's a program under WIOA that is pretty much specifically designed, well, I say it's specifically designed. It is the way the program is written. It is very advantageous for people who have past criminal justice involvement to use. It's called a transitional worker program, and they'll be able to tell you about this. If you ask them about a program for employment for folks that have past criminal justice involvement at your WorkSource, they'll be able to name this program. It's called Transitional Worker Training. And what it does is it basically pays your wages for some period of time and gives an employer an incentive to give you an opportunity. So an employer may feel like they're taking a risk by hiring someone with past criminal justice involvement if the employer is going to be responsible to pay their wages. But by using this program, the employer can basically be a business work site for you. The employer is going to provide you worker training and allow you to work in their organization, but your wages are going to be paid by WorkSource. And so the employer gets the advantage of basically getting a look at you for free, because maybe they want to hire you long term, but they won't know that until they see you a little bit, and you get paid, and it's lower risk to the employer. So it's a great opportunity for folks that have past criminal justice involvement, or people that are in recovery that have been out of work for a while, to take advantage of. And again, funds for worker retraining are funds for education as well. Next slide, please. And so who's eligible? There's 3 categories. There's a lot more rules that go with this, but I'm just going to give you the high level overview. So who's eligible? Displaced workers. What a displaced worker means is somebody who is unemployed through no fault of their own. So you can't be out of work because you stole a bunch of money from your employer and got fired. But if you got laid off because of COVID, or if you have some other life circumstance that has made it difficult for you to keep work, then you may qualify under this displaced worker. Adults who are low income, and I can talk to this specifically. When I got sober, I was on food stamps for a little while, and I was low income. So I lived in sober housing for a while as well. So if you basically get any type of government assistance like Section 8, or you get food stamps or something like that, then you are likely to qualify under low income. And also, there's a category for youth between the ages of 16 and 24. So if you fall in any of those categories, or think you might, you should definitely reach out to WorkSource, and their team will help to determine whether you're eligible. It's a government program like anything else. They're going to ask you for ID, they're going to ask you to fill out some paperwork, but it doesn't cost you anything to apply, and it usually takes 2 or 3 weeks for you to know. Next slide, please. All right, and so I already talked about this a bit. I forgot I put this slide in. All right, so there's subsidized work opportunities. That's that transitional job. So it places you at an employer and pays your wages for 2 to 6 months. They also have paid internships as well, but paid internships and transitional jobs are basically the exact same thing. The only difference is the folks that are eligible for transitional jobs tend to fall into that category of folks that have had some issues in either getting or keeping employment. And then the other thing that could be used for folks that have past criminal justice involvement is what we call on-the-job training. So it basically, when you get a new job, obviously, there is some time that needs to be spent in training you in how to do your new job. And this on-the-job training program reimburses an employer 50% of the wages you earn while you're training for that new job. So again, just another program that gives an employer an incentive to offer an opportunity to someone that they may not have otherwise offered an opportunity to. And for any of these programs, you have to be enrolled and eligible for the WIOA program in order to be able to take advantage of these. So that's why I say it pays for everyone to reach out to your local WorkSource, try to get connected to the WIOA team, and at least fill out an application. Next slide. All right. And so here's how you check if you're eligible. So you contact your local WorkSource office, ask for the WIOA team. Here are the links if you live in Snohomish, King, or Pierce County. But again, if you do a Google search in your area for local WorkSource office or something like that, I'm positive that the closest office will come up for you. And again, I'm definitely going to make sure that that we make these slides available to everyone, so you'll have all these links and be able to get to this information. Next slide, please. And let me just check the chat real quick here and make sure I don't have anybody else. Okay, we're good. All right, perfect. All right, so you want to look in the right places. And a very, very smart person that I ran across said this quote. It was, many employers will give you a shot, but most don't want to be the first shot. And Jason, can we reveal who said that? Just click on your screen. Yeah, it was me. I said that. So, this is, I hear a lot of employers say this. A lot of employers do want to, they do actually want to try to provide opportunities for folks, but they, as I mentioned earlier, employers are about lowering the risk when it comes to hiring. And so, this goes back to that job training question. So if you have job training, you can list on your resume, which shows that you are ready to work. That's going to work in your favor. If you were like me, and you had a job as a janitor for 6 months, and then you want to go do something else, that janitor job can pay off for you, because if you performed at that job, what it shows is that you're dependable and you can do good work. And it's going to demonstrate a lot of the qualities that employers are going to want to see. So A lot of employers will want to be that second shot in line, but some of them just don't want to be the first. And so it's important to, when we do that, to just try to get you that first opportunity, no matter what it is. Next slide, please. And so there's some ways that we can do that. And one of the ways that I coach my folks to get that first opportunity is to use what I call the ABC employment system. And it's really easy. Go ahead and click. A, the first thing you want to do is get any damn job you can. Even if you know it's not going to be the job that you want to keep forever, even if it's not work that you want to do right now, you just need to get back into the workforce and get some job experience under your belt. So maybe you're going to be a janitor, maybe you're going to be a construction laborer, maybe you're going to work at Taco Bell, and that's what you need to do right now. But recognize that that job is only a means to an end. That is a stepping stone to what the next thing's going to be, and the next thing is going to be a better job. So I'll use myself as an example. The first any job that I had was that job as a janitor. The better job that I got a little while later was doing sales for a small manufacturer. Now, in both of those cases, those weren't, that better job, that second job was definitely way better than my first one. I got a big bump in pay. I got a bump in responsibility. I got to learn a bunch of stuff. I stayed at the company for 3 years. But I knew ultimately that wasn't where I wanted to be. I wanted to be doing something else, but that better job got me more of the job skills that I needed to be doing what I'm doing now, which is C. Could you go ahead and click on that? C, the career job. And so I always recommend that folks, when you're making that journey back, that you kind of think about it in stages. That first job I had was definitely not a job I wanted to do forever. But because I knew I wasn't going to be doing it forever, it made it easier for me to take it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, my screen dropped off for a second. So it made it easier for me to take that job and be in that job. And I was lucky to have that job. It was really, really good for me. And but that better job it turned out to be better for me. And it finally led me to the career job that I have now. But I couldn't have gotten here without having had those first two experiences. And it wasn't a quick road. It's taken me basically it took me 4 years. I've been in this current job for a year now. It took me 4 years to get here. But, it has been well worth the journey. I just saw a question in the chat, and someone, I think it was Kevin, asked, how long do you stay at any job? As long as is necessary. And so, one of the reasons, there's a couple reasons I always recommend just getting any damn job you can get. So in the typical characteristics of any job, number one, they're pretty easy to get. Number two, if you lose it, it's easy to go get another one. And the reason why that's important is one of the things that people never want to talk about in early recovery, and that's relapse. Unfortunately, for some of us, relapse is going to be part of the story. And to me, it's really, really important to be able to figure out and get your footing under you in recovery before you try to go get that career job. Because, if you relapse and you lose a job, it's going to be disappointing. But it's probably going to be a lot less disappointing to relapse and lose a job as a janitor than it would be to relapse and lose a job as a software engineer at Google. Know what I mean? So I really recommend that you take your time and work that job until you feel like you and the people who are in your life, meaning a sponsor, if you have one, your family, your pastor, your counselor, whomever is in your life and in your corner, helping you build that road back or walk that road back. Once you feel like you are stable, and when I say stable, if you are you grounded in recovery and you're connected to some form of recovery that doesn't include just you, doesn't have to be AA, but something. Number two, are you dependable? Have you shown up for work on time for the last 60 days? Now, things come up, emergencies happen, snow shows up on the ground, and you can't get to work because, you don't have a car, the bus has stopped running. I get it. But if outside of those things that are out of your control, if you've gotten to work on time for the last 60 days consistently, and you've been present and been a good worker, maybe you can start thinking about it. But if you haven't, I'd say no, you're not ready to leave that any job. You need to keep it until you can get to that consistency. The third thing, have you been a good employee? And that's important because I highly recommend that you ask for a letter of recommendation on your way out the door. Now, for most of those any jobs that you get, most managers are going to know that, they're going to have a lot of turnover in employees, and people aren't going to stay there forever. If you're working fast food, believe me, your manager knows that you're not going to be there forever. So in many cases, those managers, if you've been a good employee, they'll be okay if you tell them, hey, I'm looking for something else for these reasons. I need to make more money. I need more hours, whatever it is. If you've been a good employee, they'll be okay. They'll be fine in providing you that letter. But if you haven't been a good enough employee to get a recommendation, well, you may want to think about it and stay there until you can. So, again, are you ready for it? So are you stable? Have you shown up on time? Have you been a good employee? And, the other thing is, can your recovery take a major change? So, maybe you've been where you are, you've built some stability and you've got your footing under you. Or do you feel like you're in a position where your recovery can take a change of going to a different employer or take that kind of change in your life? If that's the case, then I'd say you're ready to move on. So the short answer is it depends. The longer answer is the answer I just gave. I hope that answers the question. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So now look in the right places. So go ahead. There you go. So I recommend that if you have past criminal justice involvement, you start small. And what I mean by that is, so in this country, I think the statistic is that about 98% of all jobs in this country are with companies who employ less than 250 people. And so small business is really the backbone of this country in a lot of ways, but especially where the opportunities are. And the smaller the company, there's a likelihood of a couple of things. Number one, you're probably going to interview with the person who's going to make the hiring decision, which is kind of a good thing because, again, a lot of employers, especially like these small family-run companies, they just run off gut feel. If they like you and they think you're going to do a good job, they're probably going to provide you an opportunity. Also, those small employers, they're going to be less likely to run background checks. It's just the way it is. The first two jobs that I had, that first job as a janitor and then that better job as a salesperson, both of those companies were under 20, they were under 20 employees. And so the other thing is that even if they run a background check at a really small company, they're going to have the greatest amount of flexibility in whether they decide to, hire you anyway, whether even if you have criminal convictions. Just an example, when I got sober, I didn't take that first job as a janitor because that was the first job I applied for. That was the first job that would take me. I actually had an interview at a pretty big company that paid pretty well. And the hiring manager, after the interview, told me that I was by far the best candidate that she'd interviewed. And she wanted to hire me on the spot, but I just had to pass the background check. Now, the convictions that I had didn't have anything to do with the job. And I only had misdemeanors. But they told me after they ran the background check that I could come back and apply in 7 years because of the criminal convictions. And a lot of that, it didn't have to do necessarily with that the convictions had anything to do with the job. It has to do with the fact that often in these really huge corporations, they have these guidelines that even if the hiring manager loves you, they just can't overturn. And so those small companies are going to really, especially in the beginning, present you with the best opportunity. Now, that being said, there's definitely some bigger companies out there that will hire for those entry-level jobs. Like fast food places will hire depending on the store. Sometimes like a grocery store, like an Albertsons or Safeway might hire. A lot of that is dependent on who the store manager is and what their attitude is about it. Sometimes you can get those jobs at bigger companies, but in general, super small companies, they are going to be a great place for you to start. You also want to seek out employers that don't run background checks. Now, with the internet, you can find out in a lot of cases whether or not employers do run background checks. Sometimes you can't, but in many cases you can. And so you want to try to seek those out as best you can. And there's even some employers out there who, even if they run background checks, you may be surprised that you can get a job. The United States Postal Service, they run background checks, but even for folks who have criminal convictions that some people consider serious, like really serious, a lot of whether you get hired there depends on what the attitude of the district manager is. So if the district manager has some experience in hiring folks that have criminal background and they're okay with it, there are folks that I know of that are level 3 offenders of some sort who are working for the Postal Service. So there are opportunities available. Or you can check out employers who don't run background checks. I'll give you a big one right now in this state who doesn't run background checks. The Employment Security Department in Washington State doesn't run background checks. They don't. So if you have any interest in having some sort of administrative position working for the state in the Employment Security Department, that might be an option. So, there are, and that, that's just a couple, again, just a couple of examples of bigger ones one who does run background check, but it's entirely dependent on the attitude of the district manager, and one who's huge who doesn't run a background check. And oh, by the way, working for the Employment Security Department, state job, lots of benefits, decent pay, but a lot of good benefits, and it's a good job. So just something to kind of think about. Next one, please. All right, so seek out fair chance or second chance employers. I mentioned these earlier, and so I'm going to give you the definition of what they are. So fair chance, second chance sound really similar, but they're a little bit different. So a fair chance employer is an employer who has said that we will, on a case-by-case basis, consider applicants who have previous criminal justice involvement. So what that says is basically they're going to think about if you've got criminal convictions. And you can actually find these fair chance employers really, really easily if you are on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn jobs, when you go do a job search, they actually have a button that you push. It's a filter that says that you can find fair chance employers. And there's a lot of employers on there that have called themselves fair chance, and a lot of them are big. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they all consider themselves fair chance employers. So depending on again, the nature of your conviction and the nature of the job, what these companies are saying is that they're going to give you a shot. And there's some big companies and there's smaller companies as well. So that's a way to find fair chance employers. So that's what a fair chance employer is. They're saying we're going to give you a fair chance in employment on a case-by-case basis, regardless of criminal background. A second chance employer is an employer that flat out says, basically we'll hire you regardless of criminal background. Right. And so and there's a big second chance employer right here in the state that's been growing like crazy. Mod Pizza. I know a lot of folks that have felonies personally that work at Mod Pizza because, again, it's kind of that thing I was talking about. Even though Mod Pizza is a big company, each individual restaurant is kind of run like a small company. If the manager likes you and they think you're a good candidate for the job, they're probably going to hire you. And again, this is a great way to kind of get your foot in the door back into the workforce. But besides that, it is a job that you can stay at. Mod Pizza is a big enough company that you could start with in any job that eventually turns into a better job because you get promoted or do something else, and then could turn into a career. So you hit all three parts of the ABC employment model with one organization, which you can do at a lot of organizations, by the way. If you can get your foot in the door at a company working in the warehouse, just to get your foot in the door with any job, and you prove yourself, you can work your way up to a better job and then a career position within the same company without ever having to leave. But it's just getting your foot in the door is the big thing. So seek out those fair chance or those second chance employers. Again, in your area, you can simply do a Google search for second chance hiring. On my website, when I'll provide a link here at the end, there's a resource page which has some resources that you can look at if you've got criminal convictions at some places you can consider getting a job. And then the last bullet here, I think. Yep. Work your network. Now, whenever I say, your network to folks, the first thing people think is, oh God, I got to go out and network with people. The second thing people think is, well, I don't really have a network. And when I say your network, I don't mean, I'm not saying that you got to go out and shake hands and kiss babies and meet a bunch of people, although that is one way to do it. I'm not saying you got to have a network that's got, 200 or 300 people in it. A network of as small as like 5 or 10 people can be really, really powerful as long as you are communicating the message that you're looking for employment. And this is especially powerful to do with people who know you're trying to live your life in a different way and do the right thing. So if you attend a church, let your pastor know, let other parishioners that know that you are looking for work. If your relatives who maybe in the past wouldn't have given you the time of day because they just thought you were no damn good, but now they see that you're trying to do the right thing, may be in a position to want to help you out in some way. And maybe they have a connection they can make for you. Maybe if you had maybe if you worked a job previously and had a good relationship with your manager when you left, maybe you can reach out to that person and just let them know that you're looking. Hey, wanted to catch up. You know, life took a couple of turns for me, but I'm back on the right track now. If you know of anybody that's hiring, let me know. So don't be afraid of only using the current connections in your life. You know, reach back to folks that you had positive interactions with in your past, even if it was 10 or 20 years ago. And if you can track them down and let them know that you're on the right path now, that can make a big difference in whether or not you're able to find employment that you enjoy and you can keep. Next slide, please. All right, and so one of the biggest questions that I get is, we're going to talk a little bit about this. Do I tell about my criminal justice? Do I tell about my criminal justice involvement and my convictions or not? Like many things in life, it depends. And so you definitely want to tell if, go ahead and click there, if there's going to be a background check. You definitely want to tell, for sure, for sure. Again, you want to get credit for being honest and don't look like you're trying to hide anything, but you want to be strategic about when you tell. So you tell after the first interview, but before they run the background check. So, and you can actually, so maybe you don't know for sure if there's going to be a background check. After that first interview is a really great time to figure that out, because you can ask one simple question that is likely going to tell you for sure. After that interview ends and they ask you, do you have any questions? All you got to ask them is, what does the rest of the hiring process look like? Or what are the next steps from here? Something like that. Because if there is if one of the next steps is a background check, then they'll tell you. If one of the next steps is a DMV check to see what your driving record is like, they're going to tell you. And then if it's appropriate for you to talk about your criminal convictions, you can do it at that time. And in just a second here, I'm going to have a very short video that's going to coach you through exactly how to do that. You don't want to tell if they don't ask. So if there's not going to be a background check and they don't ask, you don't want to tell. Now, this is not because I'm encouraging anyone to be dishonest. 100% encourage you to always tell the truth about your background if they ask or if there's going to be a background check. But if there's not, what you don't want to do is you don't want to limit yourself from any opportunities by revealing that you have a criminal conviction history. Because what's the point? It doesn't make any difference. So you just want to, you don't need to tell that if they don't ask. And then the other time that you don't want to tell is if there's not going to be a background check. Again, there's absolutely no reason to tell. Again, I want to make it very clear. Be prepared to be honest and truthful about your criminal convictions if need be. But if you don't need to say anything, don't say anything. All right, next slide, please. All right, so be prepared for the interview. And so, Jason, this is going to bring up a link that you can click on. It's about a 2-minute YouTube video. And so if you could click on that, it's going to talk a little bit about how you can be prepared to talk about your criminal convictions when you're in an interview.
More so if you have a criminal record. You have to deal with the feeling of being judged, the possibility of your record affecting your chances, and more.
Can you all hear that okay?
We can hear it, but we can't see it.
Okay, give me just a second here.
While Jason's doing that, does anybody have any questions?
I apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties. I've got that up on my screen that I'm sharing and I can see and hear it. I just don't know why it's not getting over to you guys.
All right.
Maybe if you exit out the full screen of the slide.
I wonder if I've got to.
Yeah, Jason, I don't want you to struggle with this too darn much. The link is there. It is an excellent link. I did not make the video. I'll give you that disclaimer, but it's an excellent video that just kind of gives you an overview. And if anybody has any questions about that afterwards, you should definitely reach out to me. All the coaching. Go ahead, Jason.
I apologize for the technical difficulty there.
Oh, don't sweat it. It's not on you, my friend. So any, let's see, there's something here in the chat. Let me make sure I get to this. Okay. If we don't have any questions, let's just go ahead and go to the next slide, please. All right, so next slide is a summary slide. So finding work with a criminal record, not super easy, but it is getting easier all the time due to a variety of things. There are lots of programs and organizations to make it easier, look in the right places, and be prepared to be honest about your past, but don't automatically disclose. And then I think the next slide is my contact information, I believe. It is. So there's my contact info. If you have any questions after this, if you think about it now, if you think about it, 2 months from now, feel free to send me an email. I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. That is the link to my resources page. And on that resources page, there's some info about places you can look for jobs. In addition to that, there is, I like to think the website is actually pretty comprehensive. There's a bunch of information, blogs that I've written about, thank you, David. A bunch of blogs that I've written about finding employment, in recovery or with past criminal justice involvement, the ways that legislation is going. So feel free to kind of look through all the blog posts. And again, if you have any questions or anything, everything I do for people in recovery is, or previous criminal justice involvement, 100% pro bono. So I'm never gonna charge anybody for coaching. If you have questions or concerns or anything, feel free to just kind of reach out. I genuinely just want to make it easier for people that are walking the same path that I did to get along on their journey and write their own comeback story. So happy to take any questions if anybody has them now, and we'll go from there.
So
hi, I think Eric had a question, but I don't know if it got answered.
yeah, Eric had a question. Could you define again the fair chance and second chance hiring?
Yeah, absolutely. So the difference between fair chance and second chance, your fair chance employer, those are employers that have said that simply we're not going to automatically eliminate you because you have criminal history. So what that says is they're going to look at applicants on a case-by-case basis, and based on the applicant and the position, they're going to make a determination about whether they're going to offer employment. A second chance employer, pretty much says, we have a policy and a culture around here of hiring people that have past criminal justice involvement. So you're always going to get an opportunity there. And there are, again, if you do, I mentioned, Mod Pizza, they have an absolute culture of hiring people that have past criminal justice involvement. If you do a search in your area, you may be able to find some places like that, that do that as well. But, Mod is one that I know off the top of my head. There's other smaller ones that are in my area generally that I know about, but second chance employers are definitely going to be the best opportunity, especially if you have more serious criminal convictions. A second chance employer is going to be a really good bet. I hope that answers the question.
And Carmen, to answer your question, yes, the presentation today and webinar is definitely being recorded, and I will share the I will share the PowerPoint with everyone, and the recording will be made available on our website as well.
Awesome. Anything else?
Does anyone else have any other questions that they would like to ask, or any more clarification on any of the great material Ty covered today?
And Dwayne, I got your note. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Hit me up whenever you get a chance.
Well, with that being said, it appears we don't have any more questions this morning. I would like to thank all of you for your time today and joining us. Ty, it was a great presentation. A lot of great material in there that a lot of our folks will be able to use. We have a lot of great webinars and trainings that will be coming up in the 2022 new year. So please keep a lookout on our Walker webpage for the updates of those upcoming trainings. Again, I want to thank all of you and wish you all happy holidays and a great new year to come. Thank you.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you, Jason.